And welcome back to another episode of the Future of the Music Industry podcast. I am one of your hosts, Javi. I am joined today with my co-host, Prez. We also have two members of our chapter leadership here. We have Kevin and Tim, respectively. Y'all, if y'all want to, feel free, say hey, wave, whatever you like.
What's up, everybody?
Okay,
Hey,
so
hey,
today, for the sake of our members, we're talking about something especially poignant. We are essentially going to be getting from a kind of first-hand basis what it's like to operate in leadership. And from kind of that lens, we can take a look at how this academic year so far has gone to try to get kind of a buoyancy point on how things can be going and what they can expect going forward. So we have already done auditions this semester, and our CEs have already been named, so that's already taken care of. And I obviously do want to get y'all's opinions on both of those. But before we get to that, if you are watching this live, and let me check over and make sure. Yeah, we are good there. If you're watching this live, make sure that you go ahead and type any questions that you might have that we or chapter leadership can answer in this public vlogging. Y'all can type that into the comment section and we can answer that live. If you have something that you want to ask that may not be quite on topic for what we're talking about today, still type it out and I will try and get those questions answered for you in text form. We just may not talk about it actually on the podcast. So, getting right into it, from both of you, I'd like to get both of your opinions. What to you are kind of the responsibilities of chapter leadership? Kevin, let's start with you. And kind of what is your process for choosing CEs?
so yeah, first of all, thank you guys for having me on here. I am so grateful to be here and talk my talk with my, I guess that other guy from another school. But so first things first, if we're talking like just what it's like to lead, I'd say I'm gonna steal a little bit from Prez's playbook. Who, once again, for the audience, we know him as Prez. Y'all know him as Derek. So don't be a little confused if I say that. But from Prez's playbook, NCEG is really like the cousin of the NCAA, but from the musical perspective. So I think it's very fitting to, I guess try to dial in on those analogs. When we're talking about leadership, it really feels a bit like being the quarterback on the field and the general manager at the same time. So on the field, getting in, doing the dirty, the nitty gritty, seeing the field, understanding what's going on around you. Um, and from the general manager perspective, it's about making the plays, being that executive, you know, s- planning with the field that you know from your quarterback role. And ultimately, that culminates into everything that we do just overall for the year. When we're talking about the CE selection process, which is a whole lot of, basically, from my perspective, from my opinion, what I do when I'm looking for CEs, I'm looking for ultimately, first and foremost, somebody you can trust. You're looking for an artist that you can depend on and rely on. You could put them on stages. They can be the faces of your organization, or your chapter or your campus or whatever.
Mm.
And first things first, like you have to trust them. You got to be able to trust them. Of course, I think it goes without saying we're looking for a little bit of talent, but it's also, finding that balance, understanding that, just with what we're working with, the development is in our hands. So you're not always looking for the, grand old superstar. In fact, a lot of our success stories from our chapter, in the past, think Kenny Mason, they weren't always the top dog when they first began, but later on you see where they end up. And I'd say lastly, the main thing that we look for really is that the ability to be coachable. It's never, for me, it's never been the expectation that you come in perfect, but it's the expectation that we can work together to perfect it, if that makes sense.
Mm. That's poignant. Tim, if you don't mind, let me hear your perspective on this. What has been your experience kind of operating within leadership, uh, for as long as you've had the position?
Most definitely. For me, my take on it is just setting up our members to be able to go out and entertain our campus. Really setting up our chapter as a hub for entertainment. We want individuals around our campus to be able to look for us for entertainers and entertainment, whether that be having a few of our artists perform at a community event, which we just had the opportunity to do last weekend, or whether it may be having some of our artists perform at some other RSO events, but just being able to set up our chapter to where we're constantly providing our members, whether they be artists and our, whether they be in the audio department, whether they be in events or media, just setting up those opportunities for our members to be able to benefit from our chapter. And kind of how we set that up is we basically want everybody to have or to learn something from our organization. I mean, it's great, especially how y'all have it set up at nationals to where they have the resources to be able to learn the knowledge and take in the information. And we just want to make sure 100% that we're giving them opportunities to use the information that they're getting, and to also practice their skills out in the industry. And as far as our CEs go, our selection process, we auditioned our CEs and we kept our CE roster that we had from last year, and we also expounded upon that. We have a few more CEs this year than we had last year, and I'm 100% with Kevin when it comes to CEs. They most definitely have to be trustable, have to be individuals and artists that we trust. We had some individuals that came in and auditioned to be a CE, and they were absolutely outstanding. But when it came to, okay, how many songs do you have out right now? Where are you in your journey as an artist? We had a few individuals who came and auditioned who were outstanding, but they had no music of their own and stuff like that. So when we were looking for our CEs, we were looking for individuals who we know we can trust, which we knew our previous CEs, we could trust them. And when we added some new CEs, we looked at kind of where they were in their journey. Are they coachable? Do they have potential? And can they grow in our program? And we've seen outstanding results so far from our artist showcase, and just jumping in with our new CE roster. And they've been super excited, ready to dive into the opportunities and all the new things that you all have prepared, and we're ready to execute the plan to make sure that our CEs can get the most out of this program and grow the most that they can.
Sounds good. I love hearing that. And kind of for that, before we just kind of get into a breakout of your individual experiences, Kevin, from your perspective, what is the difference between an artist that just comes into the organization hoping that the organization can kind of give them the keys to the metaphorical kingdom for the music industry? What's the difference between kind of anybody that walks into the chapter that just goes to the school looking for maybe guidance or for even resources? Let's be honest. What's the difference between them and a CE that will actually represent and stand for the chapter?
Yeah. So the short answer is everything. It's everything, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that. But the
Mm.
longer answer, you know, when we're looking, well, let me go ahead and put it like this: CEs oftentimes get the limelight. They get, to be the stars of the show. They're the ones that everybody sees all the time, and that becomes a very attractive draw for a lot of people. But kind of going back to that sports metaphor, nobody sees the work that the athletes are putting in behind the scenes.
Mm.
And the truth of the matter is, a lot of the times, those people that are like seeking that golden bullet or that, silver spoon or that perfect solution, I'll be frank, I've never really seen too many instances in which case they'd be willing to also do the work that's required of that. And ultimately, when we're talking about like the CEs and the selections, that's also why, funnily enough, when you look at the chapter and you look at, the past, just full membership list and then the CE list each year, typically you're seeing a higher number of people that were previously members become CEs because you know what they're going to do. You know the work they're going to put in. You know how much you can trust them. You know that they understand the system a little bit better. And when you are going out on a limb and you're choosing your CEs and you choose somebody that you've never seen before, it is inherently and significantly just more risky when it comes to keeping them on your roster. I'll say, like, this year I'm the president, but last year as VP, we took some L's because we took a little too many risks. And ultimately, it goes back to your question, where it's like, yeah, when we're talking about people that have these aspirations, they're kind of pointless, like, because the aspiration, there's to get to that aspiration, there's a journey in the middle of that. And the question is, are you willing to go on that journey and do everything that you need to do to get to that aspiration, or that goal, or that place you want to be? Because it's not easy. I'll be frank. It's a responsibility.
Hmm.
So my question would really be, I mean, especially, because we've heard from Kevin. Kevin was at least in leadership last year, but for you, Tim, like this is like your first year being, in like the like executive side of this. I really want to know from both of y'all, but I want to start with Tim. Like, what's something, you know, I guess one of the challenges that you didn't really see coming with regards to being a leader in this context, or something that you've learned from like this experience so far? Because I mean, we're still early in it, but I'm sure y'all have had y'all share of challenges already.
Most definitely. I'll start with a challenge that I faced, and I kind of thought about it once I began to enter the role at the beginning of the semester, towards the very end of the summer. But I did decide to keep um, pretty much every department head that we had from last year, with an exception. I don't even think we had a head of audio last year. So of course we had a new addition to the executive board with the head of audio, but I decided to keep um, everybody who was essentially a department head last year. And the challenge that came with that is I knew that it would be different, just from having a conversations with Prez about how this year is going to run, and especially being a general member last year. I already had some ideas on how we could go to the next level, or some opportunities for improvement as a chapter coming in, and I knew that it would be different for our department heads, and I knew that it would require so much more effort than what was being put in the previous years. So it was a challenge as far as adjusting to them and them adjusting to me as far as how we were going to run the chapter. But as we begin to have our meetings, begin to meet more frequently, and get to jump into it, I've seen a huge passion for the industry and for what we're doing out of every single department head, to where it's no longer feeling like they're no longer feeling like it's a job, or it's not draining for them, but they're excited to do it. And one thing that I've learned is once people are excited and once they have a passion, and once they see things begin to work, because the showcase that we had, our certified entertainer showcase, uh, was a huge event, outstanding event, that many of them was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we pulled this off at the end of the day. And having such a successful event at the beginning of that gave them so much more passion and fire for what we're doing, because they can see that, okay, this is actually working. We got a lot of attention now, so we have to keep up this stamina that we have, and that's something that I learned. As they begin to see that success, their passion increases, and it's very encouraging as a chapter leader to be able to see the rest of the team getting with the program and beginning to have a passion and beginning to put in the work. And it's just been amazing. So that was a challenge, which turned into a very, very, very rewarding learning experience. And it's most definitely encouraging.
Got you,
Um,
Kevin. Same thing for you. Ultimately,
yeah.
before we move on.
Just to ask a question again. So we're just discussing like the challenges.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm the realizations. I want to get down to the nitty gritty of really like talking about what it means to be the person in charge, because there's a in traditionally in these programs there's a belief that myself or Javi or Atlas is ultimately like running the show behind the scenes. And and oftentimes we talk about how, like, no, it's y'all, you know what I mean? So talk about some of the realization of what that really means from your perspective and how that's probably different than what you expected.
Yeah. So first things first, I want to just say thank you to you and Atlas and Hobby for being the evil, invisible Illuminati hand behind the scenes, pulling all the strings. We know whatever I say, you guys. I just want to let you know they have me at gunpoint. So I actually I'm lying. No, I'm kidding. But on a serious note, it everybody wants to be a leader till they want to be a leader. And it's the understanding that once you hit that executive role at the beginning, middle, and end of the day, you don't get to be helpless anymore. Like there's nothing that's technically out of your control or power. It's just not. And bad executives, I'll be frank, in my opinion, are the ones that will throw their hands up in the air and say, I will. And I had to learn that lesson personally. You know, for me, the real the real spill is that like for me to do this, I had to address and check myself, like and consistently check myself. I had to check my own biases. I had to check my own, preconceived notions. I had to check my laziness at times. I get real lackadaisical. And the reason why that's so important is because everything that you do, your members will do. It is the weirdest thing ever. They will reflect off you, and they're gonna watch this later and they're like, no, we don't. No, no, no. Trust me. Everything that I do, they reflect off me 100% to the T. And that ultimately leads to, I guess, the much larger conversation when it comes to like my chapter at Georgia State. We're a legacy chapter. We've been here, what, 11 years now? Was the decade mark last year?
Yeah.
Mm.
We've been
Wow.
here 11 years. We have always been, the chapter where there's, a lot of pilots being done. There's a lot of experiments being done. We're always testing and, refining and doing new things. And we've created a lot of great results off of that. But ultimately, one thing I found out early on was that the point had been lost. The point had been lost. So I had to actively, and I have to consistently actively reset the culture. Like this is what we're here for. These are the goals. This isn't about your stardom or all the glitz and the glamour. We're not here to make you the next Taylor Swift at this current moment. It's about doing the work, and ultimately, that's been one of the biggest challenges on myself and on my department heads and on my members. Like, no, 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 we're here to do work. And in order to do that, like we have to be in constant communication, which is a lot more difficult than people might think. We have to make sure that we're holding ourselves accountable to deadlines and due dates for things. We have to make sure that we're not getting too in our heads and not getting too, in ourselves, and we're continuously pushing each other. That I'd say would be the biggest challenge. But like as we continue to get better and better and better at it, it gets a lot more easy and a lot more efficient. As it currently stands right now, I'd say we're very much in the lab, so to speak. In which case, we theoretically could, go out and we can seek a whole lot of different things. But right now, especially, knowing about different things that might come about and understanding the opportunities that are ahead of us. No, I really want to make sure that we are 100% like, hey, 10 toes down, because ultimately you only get one opportunity and you're either going to do it right or you're going to do it again. So,
So, so I think okay. So now is the point of this session where I'm gonna put y'all in the hot seat. Okay, are y'all ready?
I'm
Because I
ready.
need to know. So we're gonna quote some numbers here, but I want to talk about y'all's rosters. Right. I
Okay.
want to talk about y'all rosters. Um. So pop quiz. See how well y'all know y'all knowledge of the manual. What is the acceptance rate, the suggested acceptance rate for chapter CEs based off of auditions?
Mm.
you out of
I
10?
know it's a low percent. I know it's not big. Um,
It's not
maybe
big.
between 7 and 15%, maybe.
Kevin, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, he said
Yeah,
that.
what?
Yeah, I think the actual number is like 15%, but like that's like the maximum, I believe. Like you
Correct.
can go as low as possible, really.
Yes. The number is 15%. The acceptance rate is 15%. So what that means for any viewers listening, that means that according to the manual, according to like the years of research that we've put into this over the course of the 11 years that Kevin was talking about, traditionally speaking, our recommendation is always that for all of the artists that you may audition over the course of, your time, that the acceptance rate is 15%. That means 15% should become CEs. Do y'all know what y'all acceptance rate is this year?
I know ours is too high. I'll say that outright.
Ours is too high as well.
Out of both of your chapters, y'all conducted 38 auditions,
Wow.
according to this data in my hand right now that I'm looking at. Our charts and graphs.
That means
38.
Georgia State would put in some auditions.
Correct. Because Georgia State is 60% of that,
Oh wow.
61 if you round,
Hmm.
and then Kennesaw would be 30, 39%.
Wow.
So, knowing that, that means based off, I want to say Georgia State announced, you know, when you actually like do the math, I want to say Georgia State ultimately approved 10 CEs.
Hmm.
And Kennesaw, you guys did what, eight?
We have nine.
Nine. Okay. So that would put you guys' acceptance rate somewhere around between Georgia State, yeah, between about 50% for
Wow.
both.
Wow.
So
Wow.
so let's get into it. With the time that we
Okay.
have left, why? Talk to me about these CEs. Why? Because data would suggest that some of y'all CEs are bound to fall off. That they can't all possibly be as good as you guys are suggesting by
Mhm.
awarding them this status. So speak for your CEs. Why did y'all choose who y'all chose, and who among your CEs are artists that y'all are like really, really, really excited about?
Okay. Kevin, would you like to start first, or can I take it away?
I mean, I'll just follow your lead. You go on ahead. OSU.
Yes, here at Kennesaw State, we have nine CEs that we accepted this year. And basically the how it all started is the decision to keep our roster from last year. And I guess that would be, um, I believe we had some who graduated, so I think we had three that were returners.
Oh man, like we lost 10.
No, my brother. All right. Well, I guess now I gotta go.
Yep.
In the meantime, so on our decision, like to have around that 50% acceptance rate, I'm standing on business. I'm standing on big business. Because my roster, I more so thought of it. Oh man, you wanna keep going too?
Nah, keep going, Kevin. You already into it. We'll let Tim resume.
All right. So yeah, standing on big business, my roster. At the end of the day, I have a justification, at bare minimum, a moderately strong justification for every one of them. But for most of them, it's a lot higher than that. But ultimately, it boils down to the fact that these CEs and these artists from this point on, which I think is a significant difference than as opposed to the prior years, what we've been doing this, they're long-term investments. And of course, artists always are long-term investments, but I mean within the scope of this, school and this college and this university, like no, we're not going to be, looking for a semester or even a year. We're looking to, really work and do work together throughout the entirety of their collegiate careers. So when you widen that time frame, you begin to factor in things a little bit differently. And of course, some of those decisions come down to who succeeds me, but you know, it's partially that we're not in a rush. we're just not in a rush. Like I said, we've had our issues in the past where I think we overplayed our hands or we've done too much too quickly. And we've been off more than we can chew without accounting in the amount of time it would take to do certain things. And ultimately, I mean, it's come back to bite us at times. When we look at this roster, I think it'd be, and of course, I guess I'll go ahead and say who our roster is. We have Collective Codes, AP the Gift, Asiko, Hinano, K Anais, Mo Fetty, Dre TL, Fire and Ice, and Seven, and then Wavy H2O. But we gotta finish up some little paperwork on him. But when we look at this roster, you got to really dive into like what we're talking about within them. So on this list, we have three graduating seniors. Like one of them is leaving this semester, who we've already been working with for a hot little minute. So in reality, the time commitment on them is a little bit shorter. We're really just teeing them up. This is their last hurrah. Give them the last few opportunities that we can. Making sure we're doing our due diligence. For the rest of them, where it's a little bit more developmental, they're still, in my opinion, very good investments. Collective Codes, I think you mentioned this on the last shows, but they got us our most profitable event. Fact of the matter is, they can bring people to shows, you know, and because they're a collective, they have that diversity that might aid in reaching different markets and demographics and psychographics, right? We're talking about Seven, who is multi-purposed, he's multifaceted. He's not just an artist, he's a DJ. Wavy H2O is also like that. We have Hinano, who is not just an artist, she's a model. And she does a whole lot of other cool stuff too, but model. So ultimately when we're talking about factoring in these decisions, I'll admit like some of these other things did come into play. I At the end of the day, I believe that we have the tools and the resources available to continue to develop and work with these CEs, which is why, to a certain extent, I said, well, I know what the number is, but you got to make a business decision. And like I said, going back into what we were talking about earlier, it's like being a GM. Sometimes as a GM, you want to retain talent and you want to begin to figure out who that next batch of developing is. And that's how I looked at it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. It's a very political answer, but I'll take it. Let's go ahead and hear from Tim because I know you got to slide out and get to a meeting, sir. So
Most definitely.
now that we got you back, let's. What about you? What about your roster? Why so many? And who do you really have? You know what I'm saying? The utmost faith in that's really gonna be able to last the test of time. How did y'all
Right.
plan that out?
Okay. So I'll pick up where I left off. The returns that we have from last year's roster is Pia Valencia, Jay Activist, and Nia Lindo, who's a poet. And our newcomers, we have Kill Street Roy, we have Adam, he goes by Opry, Spuda, Kayla Janae, and Grillo, who goes by Bria. So basically, with our three, so we already three slots. Okay, so we had three slots, and I mean the vice president, we were talking, we were like, how many do we really want to let on after this? We had a number in mind, but we waited to see auditions. We got through all the auditions, and we had every e-board member, with an exception of one or two. So all of our department heads sitting down, looking for specific things, and using that rubric to actually, judge who these artists are that are coming in the room. And like I said, we saw a lot of talent. If the number was a little bit bigger, we probably would have had a little bit more. But we knew that everybody can't be a CE. But another thing that we did know also, when it came to CE selection, is the fact that just because you are a CE now does not mean that you're a CE tomorrow. Does not mean that you're a CE next week. Because if you're not producing, if you're not doing what we need you to do, you can be cut. Because at the end of the day, you're a reflection on our chapter, and a reflection on myself and the other executives of our chapter as well. So they very much so understood that, and it will be reiterated in the meeting that we have today. But when we had those auditions, and I'll say it, Bria actually, she's a department head of audio, and she initially did not go through. She did not sign up for auditions before the audition date. And how that happened was the second day of auditions, everyone was done. And I scanned the room and I asked, okay, is there anyone else here to audition? Sounds like nobody. Okay, Chloe. And then our head of audio was like, "Hey, I'll audition. Can I audition?" I was like, "Sure." So she picked up the mic, she put on her track, and she started rapping. In the room, we had maybe around 15, 20 people in the room watching auditions. The room went crazy. She snapped. And she's a female rapper. And at that, when she was done, of course, we talked about the people who was on the e-board who auditioned without the whole e-board. It was between the executives only for conflict of interest reasons. But after that, it was like, oh my gosh, if she could get this room of people hyped up like that, imagine what she could do for the campus as a whole, how successful she can be on campus. Not to mention, she's also a DJ here on campus and has a good rep on campus as well. When we're talking about the ones that we brought back, Pia J activist Nia Lindo, we've seen what they can do. We've seen that they can produce good they can produce fruit essentially. And another thing that we know about those three individuals is they can pretty much Nia Lindo can she we're working on her to start putting out some more stuff, but essentially those three can function if they did not have NCEG. If they did not have NCEG, they would still be putting out music. They would still be promoting themselves. They would still be getting their tracks made. So we know, okay, if they're that strong alone, they can be an asset and won't be a burden to us as a chapter and to our CE roster. And honestly, Bria was a big one, but Kill Street Roy was also one that we were like, oh my gosh, because Kill Street Roy, um, he's African American. He has locks. I mean, but when he started doing his track, we were like, oh my gosh, this is not what we're used to hearing. This is not what we're used to. It may be what we're used to seeing, but it's not what we're used to hearing. There was a different sound. And although he does have some aspect of his music that is rap, the sound that he had was just so different and so captivating to where we wanted to hear more. And same thing with Opry. Opry had a different sound. It's not R&B, it's not rap. It's more of your indie pop, alternative pop music that when we heard it, we was like, okay, this is different. Even some people on the e-board didn't know about it, but at the end of the day, when we had a discussion, hey, this is what we want. And really, it validated what we our suspicions and our thoughts at our artist showcase, because when we put these people on the stage, the reaction that we got from the crowd was outstanding. We have a few videos of during their performance. I know Opry for sure. When he went up and did his set, his crowd engagement was off the charts. He's a freshman at that. And he had great crowd engagement in the room in his audition as well. But we were able to see that we made a good decision at our artist showcase, where we had hundreds of people out on. And that's when we were kind of like, okay, we made the right decision on having our non-CEs, and we have a perfect balance of trusted individuals and individuals that, yes, are new, yes, may be different, yes, maybe want a freshman, but that we see that they have potential and that we trust in the process and what you all give us to make these artists successful with their EPKs, with making sure that y'all are giving us the knowledge to be able to give them to be able to make the most out of the resources that they get. And we are 100% positive that our CE roster can bear great fruit and be able to make the most out of the resources that we have in store for them to go far.
And I definitely wanted to add to that because he brought up a really good point. Ultimately, when we're looking at these CE rosters, we're talking about making acceptable risks and mitigating, unacceptable ones. And when you talk about our roster that has, 9 or 10, you also got to remember there's 4 members for every CE, just from a numbers perspective, because we have, that type of membership that could support it. Of course, we would like to have that number higher, but it's still very good as a start. There's somebody in each department that could cover each CE, theoretically speaking. It's also worth mentioning that, you know, because Tim mentioned this a few moments ago, a lot of these CEs are self-starters, and a lot of them actually have their own management teams. So from that perspective, sometimes it's more so just about communicating with their manager outside of the organization and, doing things like that. Collective Codes is not just a rap group, but it really functions, more like a management group, holding each other accountable. AP The Gift is with CTC Management. Big shout out to them. I love what they do in terms of like the content creation and how, they just move outside. Fire and Ice and Wavy H2O are both, having their business managed by Greg Rock Blaze from Rockland One. So it's not that, we're not also just out here, drowning by ourselves. Like, no, there are also external players and, stakeholders that aid us in every other way.
Dope, dope. Well, I mean, again, I appreciate it. I think the point that you all have your autonomy is good. The fact that you believe in your artist is good. It is to say that though we create guidelines, it's fully within you all's ability and capability to experiment and see what happens, right? I appreciate the thought towards investment in some of these new acts early, right? Like that you guys have some freshmen that you're putting on the team, and I can appreciate that. But and I know Tim has to go because he has to get to a meeting. Um, so I want to give us a moment to be able to, I guess, just say goodbye to him, so he doesn't feel the need to linger long.
See y'all later. Thanks for having me again.
Absolutely,
No
bro.
problem, Tim.
Y'all got me all day. Feel free if you have any more questions that you're interested in.
Yeah, so before I get maybe to the next question, the thing that I just want to kind of leave with both of you, and I hope Tim can kind of come back and see this for posterity. Uh, the thing that you just want to keep in mind, it doesn't really matter how many CEs you have, right? The number is not really the important thing. The important thing that you want to make sure that you're kind of fulfilling on behalf of them is just to make sure that there are enough resources and opportunities available so that none of them, once they have the moniker of CE, that none of them feel essentially that kind of being in that position is a squanderable position to be in. You don't want it to feel like if you have, say, for example, 10 artists, and during the course of the semester, y'all are only doing 4 shows, right? And each of those shows may not cater to the audiences of one of those artists. You want to make sure that however many you have, there are enough kind of planners and thinkers in the rest of leadership to make sure that they all will have the resources and the time that they need to actually feel like they're getting enough out of it. Because again, I understand the point that you made that half of them maybe or a bit less are self-starters, and essentially they're going to do what they would do otherwise anyway. But you don't want that to lead to complacency. Because again, if they could be doing it on their own, you may be lucky this year that you have people that aren't just gonna, for better or worse, chuck a fuck it and just say, all right, well, if I can do everything that I'm doing with the program by myself, then why not just do that? If that makes sense. You want to make sure that whether you have 5 or 15, each of them are making sure that they're getting something out of it to kind of warrant the position that they're holding, essentially. Okie doke. So on a more positive note, before we move on, because we've talked about the challenges, we've talked about the CEs within the realm of leadership again, because what I'd like to do is kind of inspire people that are kind of on the fence about joining leadership for their chapter, giving them a reason why not to just be intimidated by the position, but why they should actually go for it and how much help they could actually be to artists in their area. What has been a gratifying part? I know that I think Tim talked about a show that they did, and that was a very gratifying experience. But you've been around a lot longer than Tim, so I imagine there have been more ups and downs. Can you talk anything about just a major W that essentially you led your team to, either as president or vice?
Yeah, I think y'all are making me think about way back when. I've had a long time here. Wow. But I think my most recent one, well, firstly, I think just outright the major just thing is that it's gratifying in and of itself. I think when I came in as a first year, I was very much a lot more averse to doing hard work. Don't ask me to do nothing because, but like now I've really gotten to the point now where not only is the end result enjoyable for me, but it's also the growth, seeing the growth over time. And ultimately, I think that's just what it really is, just at every scale. I think on every answer I did would end up just being a micro version of the growth. I came in a whole different person, going out a whole different person. I came in with, a whole different network, going out with a whole different network. I just, and even within like just the grand scheme of like leadership, a lot of times, and part of it is understanding that it's going to be lost upon my members and a lot of the CEs until it's not. But like, I can't tell you how much I've watched them grow in so many different ways. It is like almost astonishing to see it happen, like just real time. And it's natural. I think that's a great thing about NCEG. Like, no, this is natural. Like by doing, you have to grow, or you just won't do. But for me, it was very much just watching that in all of them that, was also gratifying, funnily enough, also just to myself, because it's like, no, I was partially responsible for that. So that's what I'd say the biggest thing for me is. If we're talking just like raw events, the Spring Carnival, Georgia State, a lot
Yeah.
of challenges, a lot of struggles within that. But at the end of the day, seeing that the product that we were able to put on stage, despite everything that happened, despite all the challenges, I
Mhm.
I couldn't say I was more proud of the entirety of my team. I really was.
Got you. Prez, was there anything else that you wanted to ask?
Um, no, I don't really think so. I think at the end of the day, like I said before, it's worth mentioning that we watch you all, right, and we invite the industry to watch you all, because what you all are doing really is this microcosm of the connections that get made that make superstars, right? And seeing that happen again and again for so many years, and seeing you all continue to do that work now, it just makes me very excited. As always, I wish you all the best. Um, I'm always, it's one thing to ask you all to be average, but as everybody who's been a part of this organization, and especially in leadership, knows, no, like we're pushing y'all to be extraordinary on purpose. We're pushing y'all to do much more than the bare minimum on purpose. We're stressing y'all out in the midst of classes and midterms and finals on purpose because that's what this game really is.
Yeah, and I
And
just want to add to that, Prez, real quick, because it's so funny. I was in a meeting with Professor Bramlett, which of course you know him, and he we had gone on a conversation of NSEG, and he had said this. He was asking like, so like, do you pay your members? I'm like, do it look like I have the money to pay my members? And he said, oh well, just know that you're gonna have to, as a leader, you're gonna have to find, alternative ways to motivate. But ultimately, if you can convince people and if you can lead and motivate people to do all these things without, you know, compensations, like regular compensation, so to speak, imagine what you'll go on to do when you have those tools and those resources. And ultimately, I think that's just the big thing. Like the preparation that is given me, I used to, it's a double sided sword because on one side I used to be so starry eyed about the industry and everything, just be like, oh my god, but now it's just like, oh no, wait, I already do this. But that's the gift of it. I already do it. So didn't mean to cut you off. I thought of that and I was like, that's literally lines of what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, no worries. I don't remember whose quote it was, but there was a quote I read somewhere, and I'll go back and look it up later. I'm sure Hobby will look it up for me and probably put it right over my face or something. Um, but the quote was something along the lines of, um, "A good leader is someone who can get people to do what he needs them to do because they want to do it." Some along those lines, right? Like, it's about understanding what actually motivates your people and being able to give them that. And most of the time, it's not money, right? Like, you're able to convince people to do things because they want to do it, not because you're telling them to do it. Um, yeah, so now I do think that those sorts of skills are um, inevitable when you're in the position that you're in. As long as you're putting forth your best, you'll be because of it.
Okay, we caught most of that. You ended off at the end, but yeah, the quote was, "A good leader is someone that can motivate and inspire their team to take action and achieve their goals because they genuinely believe in the purpose and want to contribute, rather than someone that simply follows orders out of obligation." I think that is very poignant for us to end on today. Um, yes, ultimately, you will always run into problems in leadership if you're just kind of spouting orders, because you will never increase the active minds that can help you make the decisions that will get you to the orders in the first place. But if you can kind of teach people not just to get invested into the family or the team, because I think a lot of jobs kind of miss the mark on that also. But if you can teach those that are essentially following your leadership, that the things that you're trying to get them to do will ultimately benefit them, then you're encouraging selfishness in a way. And you always will find yourself succeeding in that. That does seem like a decent thing to kind of put a bow on this situation for. I want to thank the people that are viewing us on YouTube today. Um, we will get to any questions that we missed today, next week, when we continue to talk about the curriculum that we are developing and getting to our members and our students. If you like the things that you see in episodes like this, make sure you hit the subscribe button. And after you subscribe, make sure you hit the little bell next to it so you can make sure that you can see what we're doing and how we continue to educate these artists as they go throughout their journey of development. But that will do it for this episode of the Future of the Music Industry podcast. I am Javi. I am joined always with Prez, Atlas momentarily, and now by one of the chapter leadership, Kevin and Tim, if you caught him. We will see y'all next week.